Hi, welcome everybody to another one of our Facebook live events, and thank you for joining us. I'm Amanda Williams, and with me is Jim Zobel. We are both historians here at the MacArthur Memorial, and today we're going to be talking about the 42nd Rainbow Division's 1917 Christmas March. And Jim, to get us started with, why don't you tell us a little bit about the makeup of the 42nd Division and some of the notable people that are in it in 1917?
Sure. Well, Merry Christmas, and main reason why we're doing this. But the Rainbow Division is one of the first divisions that gets created from those National Guard units when they get into the war in April of 1917. You've got a couple of regular divisions that are going to go over the first and the second, and then you've got these National Guard division. Now, they created the Rainbow to be like this all-American division. They had 26 units from 26 different states that were in the Rainbow. You had Ohio regiment, an Alabama regiment, an Iowa regiment, and a New York regiment to be your infantry regiments. You got Pennsylvania guys, Georgia guys that are your machine gun regiments. Like your hospitals come from New Jersey, Nebraska, and Colorado and DC, and then you've got ammunition trains from Kansas. And so you can see it's like this conglomerate of troops that come together that they bring together in at Long Island in September of 1917 to get ready to go overseas. They thought this would be the first one to go over. That's why they were going to create like this all-American division so that one state wouldn't be angry that their guys were the first or the last to go. That was the idea for it. It was actually the fourth that gets over there. But you've got Douglas MacArthur as your chief of staff, the head of the War Department Militia Bureau, this guy William Mann. He'll be the commander. He won't last too long. But you've got a lot of other people that'll make a name for themselves, not only then, but in World War II. William Donovan, who will become the head of the OSS in World War II. He's a great commander in the New York regiment. He had been in the Army in the about turn of the century in that National Guard for New York, the Fighting 69th, had served down on the border, but he was a really well-practicing lawyer, and he comes back. Another guy, Grayson Prebos Murphy, he had won the medal or earned the Medal of Honor in the Spanish-American War, and then got a position at West Point because of that. Graduates from there, becomes a major businessman. Before the war, he's touring Europe with Herbert Hoover about the food problem. But when the war starts, he's back in the green. And you'll have Robert Beetler, who commands the 37th Division in World War II. You'll have Wilbur Brucker in the Ohio Regiment. He's like the Secretary of the Army after in the 1950s. So you have a lot of people in this division that will go on and do other things later on.
So, I guess, what does the war look like in Europe when the 42nd Division arrives?
It is not a good time. You've just had the Russian Revolution. They are very worried that that the war in the East is going to end, which it will, and all those German troops are going to come from the Eastern Front over to the Western Front. So when the Rainbow Division gets there, there are only 4 divisions there in France, American divisions there in France. So it's a very early time. You've just had the British offensive in Passchendaele, which decimated the British army. I mean, they won't be able to carry off another major offensive till about the end of the war, come November of 1918. That 100 days before the end of the war is when they will really pull it off. So things for the Allies are not looking good down in Italy at Caporetto. You just got squashed by the Germans and the Austrians down there. They've just put together the Supreme War Council, where they've made Ferdinand Foch the French field marshal as head of that. So it's a great time of worry for the Allies when the Americans first start showing up there in France.
And I mean, how does the size of an American division compare to the European counterparts?
They're huge. The American divisions are running about 27,000 people because they've got all their sanitary trains, all their ammunition trains, everything that goes. The division is supposed to be a completely compact fighting unit that can take care of itself as it goes through. Whereas the British and the French have like 15, 16,000 men in their divisions. I think the Germans have about 18. The American divisions are just monstrous.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, has there been attrition in terms of the size of the German divisions, British, French, or, is it just a fact that they don't have the manpower they had in 1914? Um,
I think that was the basic size that they were. And that's what people remark on so much is how huge and unwieldy these American divisions are when they get in there. Of course, everybody is, decimated by that time, but they're pumping it through. But I think you were kind of looking at that size through the whole war for those British, French, and Germans. Of course, I'm sure somebody will come back and say that I'm completely wrong, which I welcome because then I learned something. But from what I've read, that's about what the size of these divisions were.
all right. And then I guess taking us to about Christmas 1917, um, is the 42nd Division under French command?
Well, they're under American control, and that's the main bone of contention that'll always between the French, British, and the Americans, because the French and the British just want to throw them in piecemeal with their own guys, and fill them in their own line as plugs. And Pershing was like, nope, we're going to fight in an American army. We're going to fight. Of course, that'll change during that those Marne campaigns of spring when Pershing allows units to be thrown in, but he's always looking to have that one compact area. Now, getting to this point, um, from October through the early part of November, that's when everybody's coming over on the ships. And a lot of them will land there at Saint-Nazaire and Brest. But a lot of them, a couple of the ships, or one of the ships of Grant had to go back. And so those guys won't land until mid-November, and they land up at Liverpool. So then they'll have to come through England and come through. Now, when the first Americans land, they send them, all the artillery guys go to Couequidan, which is like the artillery camp. That's kind of right near Saint-Nazaire. But all the infantry guys, everybody else, they're all going to go to this place called Vaucouleurs, which is in the Haute-Marne district. It's about 150 miles southeast of Paris. You can hear the guns from there. So when these guys get there, but this is the old training area 5 for the French. And that's where they'll first start gathering around there. The Ohio guys are in this place called Morlancourt, and the Alabamians are in Uruf, these places, but they're all associated with Joan of Arc, because that's where she was from, was that area, Don Remy, and Uruf, I think, was where the Joan of Arc's chapel was. So all these guys over there, they're all just freaking out, because she was the great campaigner, the great crusader, and they all see themselves as that way. So that's what a lot of them talk about, is how they're really, excited about this fact that they're around this area where Joan of Arc was from. About November 15th, and getting into early December, that's when you finally get all these troops that come in from Britain again. So finally, about December 15th, you've got all the rainbow gathered again. Everybody's come from England, and now they're going to start these early marches, which takes them from that Haute-Marne district, or the Vaucouleurs district, to this place called La Fouche. And these are when it's just starting to snow, and they've got these 2-3 day marches taking about 12-15 miles a day. Because see, that month-long journey where they're on the high seas then going through England, none of them are exercising. And so they're all out of shape. They're all got to work the kinks out. And so they're putting them through these marches. You don't have a lot of wagon support yet. They had to bring all their animals from Europe, so they haven't gotten there yet. You've only got, I think, about 36 ambulances, the Fords that the sanitary train gets, like right around that time. But right around that December 15th period is when the division finally gets together again, right in that Vaucouleurs and La Fouche area.
I had no idea about that Joan of Arc connection.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
pretty interesting.
And I think that the chapel is now in Milwaukee. It's at Marquette University. They brought the whole thing from there
Oh,
to
wow.
the United States, stone by stone, and you can go there and visit it.
Okay. All right. So what does the division do? They're all where they kind of need to be by December 15th. How do they all spend Christmas?
Well, Christmas, they had these marches before then where it started snowing, sleeting, raining. It's starting to get real cold, but the higher ups of the Allied Expeditionary Force, they want them down around this place called Roland-Pont. It was down near Chaumont, which is the American headquarters. It's southeast of Paris at that time. And so they're setting them up to get them ready to march to that area. So they had those early marches where they brought everybody to that Le Fouche area, but they gave them Christmas off. And so like the Alabamians end up in this place, Saint-Blin, with sanitary train, and the Ohio guys are at this place. The Rimacore is where the Iowa guys finally end up, and then the Ohio guys at Morlancourt, and so they have all their Christmases there. And the great thing is this Haute-de-Marne area had been a battle zone, and so the French people had really not had Christmas for 4 years. You know, kids at that time had no idea what Christmas was about. All these Rainbow Division units, they get the local chapel, they set up like a midnight mass, they scour the countryside for toys, food, everything. And in each town, the people bring all their kids, and the Rainbow Division guys are there, and they have this big Christmas for all and they say these kids are just wide-eyed, can't believe, you know, what's going on, because it's the first time they've ever seen this. They have all the bands there. Father, you know, the famous Father Francis Duffy from New York had this monstrous Christmas mass, and they said the communion went on till about 2:30 that morning. Everybody gets the day off the next day. They say this is, they're all getting fed and getting fed a lot of food, and they realize what's going on, because the General Order 22 has been given, and that's going to be this 3-day march down to Roland-Pont. It snowed, I think, like 8 inches on Christmas. It dropped down to below 0. So even though they're having this Christmas, everybody knows they're going on the road tomorrow. And it is, you know, you're in wool. They're wearing the same clothes they were wearing when they did their parade at Long Island. You know, their wool issues, many got overcoats, but not all. You know, they say gloves are an exception. Boots are basically leather that are wet from the time you start till the time you end. They freeze every night, and you know, you've got to light fires in them to get them warm enough to put on the next morning. So these guys on Christmas, they all know what's coming up, and they are not looking forward to it.
I've read a few different accounts, and some people are saying like 3 to 4 feet of snow is what they end up marching through. Is that accurate?
Well, I think that's what they said the drifts got to. The thing is, they're going through these foothills of the Vosges Mountains, where you have these long, steep grades that go up. They said when they started that morning of the 26th, see, a lot of guys, they do it in a column march that goes down to Roland-Pont. So the unit farthest away starts it, they get to the town, the next group picks up, you know, they get to the next town. And so it's a column march that goes all the way down there. But the thing was the pioneer groups are in front. And so they got to plow through those 3-foot drifts. Mm-hmm. And then the guys in the back, they're marching on all that snow and everything that's been tramped down. So they just got a sheet of ice, you know, that they're walking on. And the thing was that they didn't even get their animals till the night before, like on Christmas. New Yorkers said that was just the biggest horror of it all. They got all these mules that have been on trains for 3 days. They're all dehydrated and sick. None of them have ever had a harness on before, and they don't want to. You can imagine mules are all sitting on the road. Yeah. You know, everybody in the regiment is trying to get these mules going, and these carrying all the food. So when they get to where they need to be, those trains are still wet. So for like 3 days, nobody's eating, you know, on this thing because of these mules. Now, the New Yorkers said, you know, all these guys are from the city, and so they really don't, you know horses or mules or anything. But there was one guy, this guy Jim Reagan, who had been in the unit since 1898, like 20 years. And the only thing they said was he was in a cowboy in his other life. And they said this guy, in an hour's time, he had all 4 mules of his named, and they're all responding to their names. You know, he knows how to work these things. And they said he never had a problem with his wagon the entire time because he knew what he was doing. You know, so it's a problem of a lot of city people not knowing what's going on. You got the Alabama guys who've never seen snow before in their life, and all of a sudden it's 0 degrees, and they don't ever want to see it again. And that's the thing. These guys go through the Champagne artillery offensive, which they said was worse than anything in World War II. They go through the Meuse Argonne, just the slop and everything. But 3/4 of the rainbow will say that that Christmas march was the worst thing that
Right.
they did over there. And all the officers will be like, wow, this really toughened up the division and really gave us our character. And all the men were like, man, you guys were trying to kill us. What are you talking about? That was the most unnecessary thing ever to happen. But Pershing saw it that way. And they saw it one way, but I think it did give him that character. It did tough him up. It gave him that realization that they could endure anything, because it's 3 days sub-zero, snowing the entire time, and they all, you have maybe about 500 drop out. The thing is that Pershing's watching them. He's got Hunter Leggett, who'll be the first Corps commander, and then the other Army commander there, and he's out watching them every day, and he just turns in a scathing report of this march. They were under-equipped. They were under-equipped on shoes. I think when the division went over, MacArthur had 50,000 pairs of extra shoes that the division took, and the Army grabbed them all immediately. Those Ohio guys didn't get their stuff, and they were hiding everything in that chateau at Morlancourt. They had everything hidden in the middle of the chateau, and the AEF came and grabbed it all right before. So these guys have shoes that are wearing out after the first, and they said that there were many trails of blood, leading, because guys would wake up, their shoes would be frozen, they just wrap their feet in burlap and make it on in burlap. The 168th guys, the Iowa guys, they were lucky. They got scarlet fever right before it happened, so they didn't have to make the march. But they were watching all the other guys come through, and they were like, man, it was like a scarecrow, line that's coming through, and that's what Hunter Leggett sees. And afterward, they really hammered the New York regiment, because they had a lot of problems with them. William Donovan would say it was because they got all these new guys from the 41st Division that didn't have any overcoats or gloves or any kind of shoes, and those guys just were dropping out like flies. And so they said that was the problem. But after the march, they held a board of inquiry, and Colonel Hines, who ran the New York regiment, he got kicked out, and they brought in new guy, because this General Order 22 had gone out 4 days before the march had happened, and they told everybody exactly what they were going to need, exactly what they were going to have on hand, and everybody else got it together, but the New York guys couldn't, and so Hines lost his position, because of that march.
Well, where is Chief of Staff Colonel
We don't
Douglas
really know.
MacArthur?
That's the thing about MacArthur. We have he didn't keep a diary, and we know so little about the things that he does, unless other people say. MacArthur in his reminiscences said it was the worst winter France had seen in many, many years, and he said that the troops had to suffer because of it, that they were in these billets that were totally inadequate, that was freezing cold, and they had to suffer more than they should have. But that's one of the gaps that in that period that we don't know exactly. We know that the division commander and the regimental commanders, they all had vehicles. We know MacArthur had a car later on driven by Virgil Brady, but does he have one now? If you read Albert Ettinger's book, he remembered later on being on this, because he was a motorcycle dispatch rider, and he had to meet one of the regiments one night during a really bad rainstorm to tell him to go a different road. And when they marched up, MacArthur was at the head of it. And that's what he said. That's what Ettinger said. That's what this guy Tice of the Virginia MP said, was that when you were on a march, you usually found MacArthur at the head of one of these troop regiments. And so was he at that point, or was he in a vehicle that goes forward? We don't really know.
Okay. One of the quotes I remember when I was doing some background research for this was from an officer with the New York guys, and he basically said the march made Napoleon's retreat from Moscow look like a Fifth Avenue parade. And like you said, most of these men kind of felt that way and felt that way very strongly for many, many years. Um, what do the months after this march look like for the 42nd?
Well, they go into intense training there at the Roland-Pont area. That's where the French advisors start coming in, and they really get it. See, because when the Americans show up, they've got no artillery. The French supply all that. The French supply a great deal of their materials, and so they've got to teach them how to use all these weapons, how to they teach them about trench warfare. Even though Pershing wants them to be a maneuverable army and everybody to be a complete crack shot rifleman, the French are teaching them, this is the way it is. You're gonna be time in the trenches. And so that for that first couple of months there, from January to late February, before they go to Luneville, Baccarat area, they're there in intense training. And then in about mid-February, that's where the artillery joins them again, and then they're going to go into the line there.
Mhm. Well, thanks, Jim, for helping us explore this tiny chapter of the 42nd Division and
It's
MacArthur's.
one of my favorite stories. I mean, every Christmas, it's what I think of.
Mhm.
I like going to winter hikes in the mountains, and I've got every type of modern equipment there is. So I can't even begin to understand what that kind of march would be like. Basically
Yeah,
in jeans and sneakers.
yeah.
Yeah.
Their version of Valley Forge, some of them said.
The one guy's quote, and I guess we can end on that. He said, "Valley Forge, hell, there ain't no such animal." Because he slid his way into Rolla Pont on these burlap shoes that he was wearing.
Yeah. Well, it's a good note to end it on. So, anyways, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be back again on Friday with a discussion of the rumor about MacArthur's $1 million house on Hollandia. So we'll have some good stories for that one, I'm sure, from Jim. So, anyways, take care. We'll be back in a couple days.
Take it easy.